It's intermission at the Artist Quarter in Minneapolis at 26th and Nicollet, and it's time to catch up once again with world traveler, guitarist, and deep influence on America's guitar players, the world's guitar players, I should say, Tal Farlow. Tal Farlow, welcome into Minnesota Public Radio. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Leigh. I'm very happy to be here again. It's almost exactly a year later, right?
Yes, and it's time for us to pick up our diary and journal on the travels of Tal Farlow. Where have you been and what have you been doing?
In November, the month of November, I was in England, touring from say, Edinburgh down to the Isle of Jersey, where I played for an entire month there, on the island, of England, I'm saying.
In the United Kingdom.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Well, appropriate weather. We have fog here all through Minnesota, so you brought a little of the UK with you.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. It's sort of typical of their weather.
Is London swinging between the Pizza Express and Ronnie Scott's these days?
It seems to be. I'll tell you that it was sort of guitar time when I was there with Barney and Charlie and Herb were there. That's the great guitarists,
Oh, my.
And Joe Pass was at Ronnie Scott's, and I was at Pizza Express, and George Benson was somewhere there at a big concert hall. So it was like a concentration of guitarists in 1 week there.
Well, I imagine you had some after-hours seminars.
That's right, yeah. Well, I got to Charlie Bird walked in there, and he said that some people from a magazine had sort of gotten hold of Barney and Herb there, so they were being interviewed. Those two places are sort of close together.
They're around the corner from each other.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Well, Tal, as I think about the world travel, have you been also teaching and conducting guitar seminars as you...
I did some of that, too. I did a class in Leeds and several in Edinburgh, and I do those usually in the afternoon, and there's a concert that evening. And it's a real pleasant duty, Leigh. I enjoy that very much.
Well, as the teaching profession, as a part of your cloak and strategy, do you have any kind of philosophy about teaching music, particularly the guitar?
I think that anything, if there's something unique about my approach, it probably would be that I tend to lean towards visualizing the fingerboard, and some say that may be because of my the business, making signs and doing.
You're a visual artist.
Artwork, right? And I do think that it's to one's advantage to visualize the patterns at certain intervals and musical sequences make on the fingerboard.
With that thought in mind, Tal, may I play this for you and the listeners and get your visual impression of this piece of music?
Uh-huh.
Here it is. Well, I'm sure that's a little distorted, but that comes all the way from Rome in the year 1950, and it is one of those legendary figures behind the guitar, along with a clarinetist by the name of Andrei Ekyan.
Uh-huh.
What's the visual impression? I know you like this theme.
Yeah, well, the song is Nuage by Django Reinhardt. It was a little, as you say, vague. I couldn't hear, but I assume it was probably Django. He was still alive at that time, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Probably his last days.
Yeah. Well, he was an extraordinary guitarist. One of the really major influences and a great musician, all-around musician. I never met him, as I never met Charlie Christian, and I didn't even meet Wes Montgomery. It seemed to be that I just managed to get. It was too late,
You're probably going different directions.
Yeah, I guess that happened, but Now, Django, my situation was that I was in a rural part of North Carolina when I was growing up. But I heard Charlie Christian because he just happened to be with one of the popular bands at the time, and consequently got heard on the radio a lot. But by way of popular music, whereas there was nobody around my area that knew what a jazz record was.
So you were living in isolation, in a sense.
Well, yeah, I guess as far as that's concerned, as far as being exposed to some jazz, only what got through on the radio.
Well, when you landed in the home base, New York City, that must have been quite an experience for you.
Yeah, well, it was, Lee. But I sort of eased my way up there, I guess you would say, because I went up by way of, say, Washington and then Baltimore and then Philadelphia. And by the time I'd spent some time in those places, I began to know, learn a lot more about what was going on. And but that was like, the big thing. I was hearing the top guys then, and I happened to be there. Somewhat later than those years, but at the time of the big musical revolution with Charlie Parker and Bud Powell and Thelonious and Dizzy, and Max Roach were shaking things up, and I consider myself lucky to have been a witness to that, firsthand.
Along with being a witness to that, you also played some very special environments. If I mention the composer, what do you say?
Yeah, that was one of the places. That was Cy Barron's room there on 58th and just off 6th Avenue. I played there several times with Eddie Costa and Vinnie Burke or Bill Tackus on bass, but that was also pleasant memories about that. I played opposite Bernard Pfeiffer and Billy Taylor and Marion McPartland. It was principally a piano room,
With a little bit of George Wellington and strings.
That's right.
Sure.
That too.
How about the venue Bop City?
I never played there, Leigh, but actually Red played up there with his trio just before I joined it, and the guitarist that was with him at that time was Mundell Lowe.
And you took Mundell's place.
I did that, yeah.
I've been watching the clock, and I know you have two more sets tonight and again on Sunday night. And Tal, it's really just a pleasure to talk with you. Minnesota Public Radio visiting with Tal Farlow, the guitarist and composer, teacher, and performing artist, and he's on stand this weekend at the Artist Quarter. Keep well there.
Yeah, thank you, Leigh. Thanks very much. It's always nice to see you, and I look forward to when I come to this city to meet you again. And thanks for your enthusiasm for our music.
Oh, it's a privilege, sir, to sit in with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.